I have over 10,000 hours of personally sitting down interviewing people myself, and so you learn a lot about people and how to interact and how to recruit.
Welcome to the Inside Scoop for Outside Sales, the show that dives deep with industry leaders to get you actionable insights to help field sales professionals like you grow and achieve more. Here's your host, Trey Gibson.
Hey everybody, this is Trey Gibson, CEO and founder of Spotio, and you're listening to the Inside Scoop on Outside Sales Podcast. I couldn't be more excited to talk to our guest today. Not only has he been a top-performing salesperson, built incredibly high-performing sales teams, and received a ton of accolades and awards along the way, he's a sales recruiting expert. And like me, he turned a problem he experienced running field sales teams into being a technology entrepreneur. It's my friend, Mark Hoge. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Trey. Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to be here, and I've learned a lot from you over the years, so appreciate being on today.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start at the beginning. How did you even get into field sales to begin with?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. So I went to the University of Idaho. I was studying business there. I found out really early on, I love business. I love entrepreneurship, everything to do with that. And I actually competed in a contest at my university it was a business plan contest. It's kind of like an angel pitch your idea type of thing. And I ended up winning it, and it came with some cash. And I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And
Wow.
for anyone that has seen Shark Tank, which is probably everyone listening right now, the number one question they always get asked is, what is your sales, right? Or do you have sales?
Yeah, exactly.
And I had no sales experience. I had no idea, but I knew I had to get it. I just knew if I was going to be a real entrepreneur and make this thing happen, I got to go learn it. And so I ended up applying for an ad, which is, obviously we're going to talk a lot about recruitment today. I was on Career Builder, just entry level kind of search, hit, grabbed an ad, applied to it. And I ended up flying out to Louisville, Kentucky for a second round interview with a company that did door-to-door sales, which I didn't fully understand until I got there, which was an interesting process.
Yeah.
They told me to dress warm, and that was about it. And so anyway, I get there, and they show me the doors, and I was like, "There's no way I'm doing this, right?" And but in that process, there was an opportunity kind of pitch where it's like, "Hey, you can do the sales, but if you're good at it, Mark, you can advance and then eventually run your own company doing this." And that really set well with me. I was like, "That's right in line. I got to learn this. I want to be an entrepreneur." And so I moved out a few weeks later and started knocking doors in Kentucky. So that's how I got started. Kind of a crazy start to my journey, but
So it sounds like that's how you had the opportunity to build your first team. So did you actually move up the ranks at that company and they say, all right, Mark, congrats, you're now a team leader or whatever?
exactly. Yeah. So it's an opportunity model where if you did well at sales, you were consistent at sales, then you had the opportunity to interview the new candidates that would come in. And I really loved the process because you take them out in the field. It was how we interviewed people back then, and some people still do it like that now. And so it's like a 6-7 hour interview. You're taking them to the field, you're knocking doors with them, and so you got really good at how to talk to people, how to recruit people. I think I really got like a master's in recruitment really when I was knocking. So, and that's how I advanced from there. Yeah.
What was part of that process? Are there certain things that you were looking for or questions that you ask, or was it just, hey, can they put up with you for a full day and welcome to the team?
No, we had every tool you can imagine. The one that stands out to me that actually really helped me, we called it FORGE. It was an acronym to keep the conversation going. So the F stood for family. So you'd say something like, "Hey, do you have family that lives in the area?" Or just something related to their family. And the goal was to get them talking, 80% of the time versus me talking, 20% of the time, and that's a good sales technique in itself. The O is occupation, recreation, dreams or desires, and sports. And I would just rotate through that model. So if I ran out of the conversational piece, this works for sales too. I just would go back to my forwards and I would ask the next thing. You could rotate all the way back through and through and through, and it's easy way to keep the conversation going.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. It's I know you've built some extremely high performing teams, and you're passionate about that development of teams. How do you motivate them to get the most out of them? I was interested in just hearing your kind of your thoughts behind that.
Yeah, it's a really good question and something I've toyed with a lot over the years. And I think the best way to describe it is, you know, the best way to motivate someone is find a motivated person, right? Like if you can find someone that's already motivated, then it's like, you stay out of their way. But there's a big difference to me between motivation and inspiration. And that's where you keep people motivated. I actually think that's the definition of inspiration is you're continually motivated. You're inspired to achieve goals. You're inspired to make something of yourself. And motivation runs off. Like if you can run a bonus every day for your sales reps, hey, $100, $200, whatever the bonus is, eventually it's going to lose its value and people won't care as much about it. Whereas inspiration is a deep why, a deep goal that I have to achieve this. This is important to me enough to where whatever happens to me, whatever challenges that I'm faced with, I'm going to persevere and I'm going to make this thing happen. And so, what I focus with my sales teams was what inspires them? Why were they really out there knocking? Why are we doing this? What's the real reason? What's the real why behind it? Is it take care of your family? Is it to, for status? Is it? And when you get to that deep why, then it's just a matter of reminding them why they're there, right? Because it's going to get tough and you're going to want to give up. But if you're inspired and you truly want to be successful, you'll get through it because that's the inspiration. That's being motivated all the time, right? Is really finding your inspiration.
How did and that's I love that. It's how did what are some of the ways you kept that in front of them? Let's say that I am motivated for I mean we're in sales, so some sort of financial freedom, right? Like
Right.
maybe it's not a Lamborghini, but maybe it's hey, I want to make a lot so I can go travel with my family or something like. What are some of the ways that you would keep that in front of them to keep them inspired?
Yeah. So one of the things I was taught was there's 7 levels of why. The first level is like, why do you want to be successful? And then you would answer that, whatever it is. I want to have financial freedom, whatever. Why do you want financial freedom, Trey?
Mm,
And then you start to get really deep on this why. And it gets to your childhood and, people get emotional, right?
yeah.
And when you figure that out, then it's a matter of
Wow.
keeping it in the forefront. So on to answer your question on our tablets, right? Like my tablet here, we encourage our team members to put a picture, an image, or something that's like on their phone, right, or something on their tablet where you're feeling down. Just look down and look at your kids, for example, or your mom that you want to take care of, that or whatever that deep why is. That was usually the best strategy for me.
That's good. Yeah, I have a I don't know what you call it. It's like a Google Slides deck that I have kind of my goals for the year. And then the final 2 pages are pictures of like some of the things that I want or my family, my kids, and I look at that every
Totally.
Monday and every Friday to just go through and did I move towards that or not this week and just try to keep that in the forefront. So it sounds like you did something similar.
Yeah, same thing. In fact, if you look at the back screen of my phone, I have this is I've worked on it over the years, but I have 20 things that I want to become, and I try to work on one
Oh
every
wow,
week.
and it's on
It's
your
kind of
phone.
yeah, it's on the back screen
That's
of my
genius.
phone. So yeah, so it's a constant reminder for
I
me to
love
like,
that.
hey, this is the person I'm trying to become. And it's also a constant like, hey, you're screwing up. You should probably do better.
Yeah. So I know like when I first met you many years ago, you had a team of, I don't remember, it was 100 people or I mean, it was a sizable team. How the heck do you recruit that many people? Like, how do you even build a team that big?
Yeah, I had a lot of help to be transparent here, a lot of leadership, a lot of mentorship so I can't take all the credit. Really, it was about developing leaders that could develop leaders, within
Mm,
your organization. So we had offices all across the country, and those people kind of came from my location where we had this culture and we embedded this dynamic of what we wanted to become and what we were dreaming of, and then they would go out and do their own thing and I would help support and we would do
mm,
trips together and things like that. But it's like anything that you want to accomplish, a small team with one common vision can achieve anything in the world, right? And that every
yeah.
big company starts that way. So it was kind of like that. We had one little team, we had a dream, we wanted to achieve things, and we stuck together. We just kept growing it, kept growing it,
Yeah.
and kept growing it.
Tactically speaking, like down to like, do you post ads on sites and then do an interview process? Like, let's talk about pre-digital hire, and then we'll talk about like, the problem you experienced in how, the easy button that you have now. The good old days. Let's talk about the good
Yeah,
old days.
the good old days. So it's funny because some of my mentors, were knocking on doors 30 years ago, and they talk about posting, ads in the newspaper, right? And then the phone
Yeah.
would ring, and it'd be answering the phone. So, yeah, I think in today's world, if you want to scale a recruitment team and you're doing it in the traditional full-time way, like I think there's a difference between recruiting sales for summer and then there's like the full-time year-round kind of strategy, which we can get into that if you want. But job boards are where people hang out, right? Like if you're looking for a job right out of college, you're probably going to go on ZipRecruiter, Indeed, or one of those, upload your resume, and that's where it's going to be. And so, it costs money to be on these job boards. What a lot of people don't know, this is a gem, I think, for a lot of people listening right now, is you if you use like ADP for payroll, for example, you can get access to ZipRecruiter database for free, pretty much, and you get a
Huh.
few ads for free. So there's different marketplaces you can leverage just to get your stuff out there. And then writing an ad can be a complicated process. I'm happy to have a call with anyone that wants to learn about that. But they have a lot of general templates you can use, and you can kind
Yeah.
of change it to what you're looking for, right? And then post an ad. And what I find a lot of times with recruitment trade, with people starting out, is it's kind of the unknown world, and so they don't take any action. It's just like, I want to recruit people. I'll just try to keep recruiting my buddies. Well, you recruit your buddies, and your buddies recruit your buddies. I could see how that can grow, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah.
if you have a real action plan, this is candidates coming in. I got to learn how to interview. I got to learn how to do these things. Um, that's that's the easiest way to do it, is just take action. To go on those job boards and start to learn.
So you would actually go and get access to resume databases and then start going after
Calling.
them. Oh
Yep,
wow, calling.
absolutely. You can
Oh
start
nice.
calling. Yeah. And some people would hire people to do this, which is I eventually did. But yeah, I mean, for me to learn it, I had to pull these resumes. I would cold call each one of them, ask them questions that I thought was pertinent to the job, and then I would invite them to come meet with me, and then the rest would be history. But I was big on personal recruiting as well. Running into people obviously is easy, and talking about what your opportunity is like. But I don't think you could scale to the thousands without having some type of really solid, scalable plan on recruitment.
Yeah, so many people, myself included, have been guilty of just posting an ad and waiting to see what comes.
Yep.
And it sounds like you took a more like really active approach. And did you find that got a different candidate, like more of a passive maybe than an active?
Kind of both, to be honest. So, like, if they were actively seeking, but no one's really actively seeking to knock doors usually. Let's be honest. Like, they're not posting to get picked up. I wish they were, but that's not how it is. So, it's recruitment. It's really about like peeling back the layers of an onion. You just have like,
Hmm.
it gets sweeter as you go deeper. Um, and that's kind of how I looked at it. It was just kind of the initial, hey, how's it going? Like a sales call. And then I would try to meet with them. And then from that point, I would really have a structured plan of like what I'm going to talk about, what we're going to, go over. And then from there, I would, take them to the field and recruit them that way.
If you had to list maybe the top three traits or characteristics you look for someone that you want to be on your team, what would those be?
In this order: integrity, integrity, integrity. I'm cheating. No, to be integrity, attitude, and work ethic. Those three things, because without the first, the other two don't matter. And without attitude is everything. And
Yeah.
it just, yeah, I'm sure you, yeah, and work ethic, right? Because you can have a great attitude, but if you're lazy, you're not going places. So those are always the top three that I would train and I would live by. And to this day with digital hires, the same three: integrity, attitude, work ethic, all day long.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you say integrity first, because in doing our research, I know several people mention how you have high integrity, and like,
Oh, great.
that's something that's obviously important to you. So how do you exhibit that as a leader? And then how do you identify that in a person you're going to hire?
For me, there's always a crossroads that you run into as leadership. And one way is the gray area that you probably shouldn't go down, and the other one might be more costly. It might be slower and more troublesome, and that's the right way. That's the real way that you should go, because it's the one of high integrity. And
Yeah.
in sales, I think you're faced with that a lot. With like pricing or follow-ups, and the misleading customers. You hear about this stuff. I wanted to do things the right way, and that's who I am. That's what I wanted. That's who I'm always going to be. And I actually feel like that actually helps your leadership and helps your recruitment because real talented people want to follow leaders that have integrity. They don't want to follow
Yeah.
people that are, a little shady. You can't really trust them. Not sure what they're really thinking. Like that's not good trust. So,
Yeah.
um, and then that's for the leadership. For the candidate component, yeah, I'd ask them direct questions like, "How do you define integrity?" And that tells
Mm.
me a lot about how they feel about it. And the answer I'm really looking for is doing the right thing when no one's looking. That's kind of the perfect
Yeah.
answer for
Yeah.
me. I wouldn't rule out a candidate, on the spot if they couldn't articulate that the right way. But um, an attitude to, I would use this is my question for attitude. How is the traffic? Because I was in DC. And would be the walk to my office question, not the formal question. Like, how is the traffic? Well, they start complaining to me about traffic and how horrible it is, and blah blah blah
Mhm.
blah blah.
Yeah.
That's a red flag for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so after you hire someone, how long does it take for you to tell if they're going to be successful? Is it pretty fast?
Yeah. So we have a saying: no one's sharp, meaning they're really they're really talented until they get their first no. So we would get a lot of people we thought were going to be great, and then they would get out in the field and just not have it, right? So I learned to not get excited about people until I saw them perform. I would usually get more excited after honestly like 2 months of consistent sales. Now I'm taking that person
Mm.
to I'm hanging out with that person very intently all the time because I want to
Yeah.
learn and get them to the next level. Um, so I think that's probably that's what I like to believe. I still can sense it right off the bat. Especially when you do 10,000 interviews, you start to before you even start talking usually, but I've been wrong just as many times as I've been right. So
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned over my years of recruiting is that you have to have a process that you put the candidate through, and you do the
yes.
same process for each candidate. I used to just kind of wing it, like, "Oh, hey, Mark, how's it going? Tell me that," and then kind of. But like, what I've learned is, you really need to be able to compare them to something, right? Like, is that how you did it? Did you have a pretty documented process that you follow?
Absolutely. I mean, every stage of the context was tracked and then analyzed on a monthly, weekly basis with my recruitment team. So we called it our huddle. And in our huddle, we came up with our game plan. And every week we had a huddle with everyone involved with recruitment was in that huddle. And we had deep conversations on KPIs, like how many people came through the door, what happened, who did they go out with? Anything you really focus on tends to expand, right? And I think that's why we got so good at it. We were known throughout the whole organization we were a part of for being people that could recruit.
I'm loving the conversation so far, Mark. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the inside scoop on outside sales.
We hope you're enjoying the inside scoop on outside sales. If you want to hear more value pack content, be sure to subscribe and check us out anywhere on social at Spodio. Now back to the show.
Okay, and we're back. So, Mark, I wanted to just touch on that last kind of point about the recruiting process. One thing that I recently learned, that just a nugget for all those people out there listening, is doing a retrospective when a new hire doesn't work out, and that's something that I had never thought about before. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but let's say you hire someone and bring them on board, and maybe they last a month or a couple, whatever it was a mishire. Is actually circling up your hiring team and looking back at the resume, looking at the process. What did we miss? And that's something that I think we're going to start doing here, and just wanted to throw that out there. Have you ever heard of that before?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think, and it usually comes up when you lose a really good person, right? That's when I think it triggers like, what did we do wrong here? Um, and there's always something. What I found that we did wrong, is like, hey, how's this experience going? And I think it's really important, Trey, that you document that and you improve on that because you'll start to find some common threads in your organization that are off that you could correct, and you really don't. That person might have stayed if they had a different experience, and they used to eat at me a lot because it's so much energy. Is people listening
Yeah.
can relate to, so much energy and the money that goes into recruitment. When you lose a good one, it stings. At least for me. I mean, it was like losing I'm a competitive guy, and if I lost a
Yeah.
basketball game, I couldn't sleep. It was the same thing with I lost someone good. I was like, man, what did we do wrong? So, so that's a really good point, Trey, and I think that's something I wish I would have done more of early on in my career.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely important is to self-evaluate and understand, where you can improve. I know you've done both B2C sales and B2B, and run teams and everything. Is there a different in the candidate profile that you would do, or the recruiting process for those two different kind of segments?
I do think that someone's really good at B2C, they could do good at B2B. And I think in retail and any other flavor, I think if someone's really good, they could do either one. But I would try to find someone on the business side that was I would go a little further down the experience route with the B2B guy, right? So
Mm.
if someone's done a lot of sales in a 10 years of sales, um, I'm more likely to hire them for business to business than B2C, just because they have a lot more experience dealing with decision makers, because you do have less chances. So you got to be on your game with those chances that you do get. Um, but yeah, in general, I'm still looking for the same sauce though.
Same sauce. Yeah. Uh, Big question that I get asked is, okay, are you going to hire someone with experience? Let's take that B2B field sales experience, someone that's done it before, or would you rather get someone with great integrity, attitude, and work ethic, and train them up your way?
I'll take new guy all day long. Yeah, all day long. Uh, Not because the other guy is not great. There's nothing wrong with having the experience. I think the challenge is we had a culture, and that culture is different than where they came from typically, right? And when people get more experience with sales, they have a way of doing it that they have confidence and beliefs that can't really be swayed. And I'm the same way. Like someone that's an expert at sales could tell me how to do it all day long. I'm still going to kind of think I know my way, right? Because I've experienced it. So I think that's the difference for me. I would definitely go with the new guy. Let's learn it together. Let me teach you my methods, because then I can see what they're going, where they're off, and I can correct it. Um, and I like the energy.
So let's talk about that. I remember when I was really driven to like come up with the idea for Spotty or create Spotty. It was like there's a point, and back problem I experienced with the field sales rep team. Was there a point when you're like, enough is enough? I have to make a change. There's like a big enough pain where we had to solve it. So tell me about that.
Yeah, no, that's so accurate. So we at one point we're doing hundreds and hundreds of interviews. Probably honestly over 100 interviews a day throughout my organization. Day,
Wow.
yeah. And so you think of the just think of the amount of time and energy for
Wow.
growing your team. And I knew there had to be a better way, and we looked at some technology. We're always trying to innovate. That's something that everyone that's on this call is doing as well. Is you're always trying to innovate. You're always trying to get better, and that's where I'm like, we have to figure out a way to scale this. If we want to get to thousands and thousands of reps throughout the country with different programs and hit our goals, we got to figure this thing out. And so we started experimenting with software. We learned a lot, and then we really wanted to create our own, something that was unique to us. And what we decided to do is create a great experience for the candidate, an interview experience, just like we could do in the office. And with technology, you could do that with video. And so we would create these amazing video series of questions and culture. We're getting all these like messaging through to the candidate. So they're learning a lot about us and our culture and what we're about. And then asynchronously, they're answering these questions on their phone or their tablet. They can do it anywhere, any place, anytime. 70% of that wasted time, in a sense,
Yeah.
for not just us, but for the candidate. They were wasting
Yeah.
their time too, a little bit, right? Can be automated through this video process. And so I went from doing that to doing a lot less, but highly targeted, highly focused. Every candidate we met with, we knew that they were someone we ultimately wanted to hire as long as they didn't screw it up. And so we were spending high quality time with high quality candidates and really recruiting, doubling down our time on those good
Mm.
candidates. And is a game changer. Not just, I mean, not just for the productivity of the business, but just for us mentally, like when you're doing that many interviews every day for that many years,
That's
it
insane.
just wears on you. It just really wears on you, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that at that scale, that's incredible. Did you have whole teams of people like doing this?
Yeah, every location I mean, because we were trying to grow, right? Just like a lot of companies, and the reality is, we have turnover. Like a lot of companies have turnover. We had more turnover because it's a hard thing to do. Door to door sales is harder to do than some other jobs, and so we had to overcompensate for that churn. That was our method, and so we really did everything we could to get as many people and give them a shot. And we got really good at recruiting. I think that's why it's a huge blessing. I think I have over 10,000 hours of personally sitting down
Wow.
interviewing people myself. And so you learn a lot about people and how to interact and how to recruit. With digital hire, we created that on our technology the best we could, where we don't lose that experience, but yet we can optimize it and make it efficient for everyone.
So how does it work? Like, would someone apply for a job and you send them, hey, would you mind taking this step? Or is there the reason I'm asking this is at Spodio we used to do where we would like send them a Google form with some questions. Like, hey, here's our office location. Does that work for you? Here's just a couple qualifiers, and we found that some candidates just didn't want to do it. Like, ain't doing it. So like, talk me through kind of those first steps of how your process works now.
Yeah, so it's a simple click link, so kind of like a form, but instead of going to a form, we're giving them more of a video experience, right? So,
Yeah.
like if I click on a link to one of our clients through Digital Hire, we'll send them the link and they'll click on it and it'll immediately take them to a video that's usually like a branded video of the company,
Mm.
whether that's like, Trey Gibson telling, hey, welcome to our interview process on video, right?
Yeah.
Or a branded like hype video for sales. Like we have some big clients in this
Oh, nice.
industry that
Yeah.
are just incredible marketing content where they're, hanging out on the beach and they got, celebrities speaking to their staff. So they're recruiting them right out of the gates. Like, here's what we are, here's what we're about. So the experience is not a form, right?
Mm.
It's an engagement type experience. And then they just go through each question, very similar to that, right? Whatever the questions are, and they record their response. And what we found is people are a lot more comfortable with it than you would think, especially post COVID.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID,
Yeah.
there was still kind of a lot of fight to get people to do the video. Now especially with like the younger generation that's coming up, they're so used to talking to their phone. It's like
Yeah.
second nature.
Video is
They
just
just
a
grab
thing.
it and right. And so we try to make it just so seamless. It's like literally click a link, put in your name and email, and you get a video and it walks you through the process where you can answer questions. And
Yeah.
then on your end, as the employer, you get to see the candidate and their resume and kind of all like what you were doing in terms of your filtration process. But the thing I don't like about the Google form thing is you never want to miss great talent ever, right? And when you start to filter, you're toying with missing out on maybe a great candidate. Um, and so with the video, what we really want to do is make it so frictionless and a great experience for the candidate,
Hmm.
but you could capture their greatness if they have it. They're
Yeah.
not going to weed it out by a form, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's, and you still can weed out the ones that aren't a good fit fairly quick. But in general, I never wanted to miss. That was one of my things. I never want to miss. And so um, I'm a big fan of my platform, obviously, because I could bring in a lot of candidates, see a lot of candidates,
Yeah.
pick the best ones, and move forward. And I'm not missing.
Well,
So
I think the key to the process and the product is that initial part of selling the company, and like that's what when we send out a form, it doesn't do that, right? Like, what am I going to
sure,
type some text like, hey, But yeah, the video, I love that because people forget that recruiting is a sales job, right? Like it's
right,
a sales job. I'm not doing you a favor by having you apply and hammering you with a bunch of questions, and it's a process that needs to be awesome. It needs to be unique. It needs to be an experience. And it's a freaking sales job, right? Like, I
right,
mean, people
right.
forget that.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's crazy how much we work with some pretty large clients, and they're very archaic in that method. It's like, hey, do their keywords on their resume match this? Then filter them out. And I'm like, hey, you're missing great talent here because some college kid, which would have been me, that didn't do keywords properly. they didn't even know how to make a resume, to be honest. Um, that they were just missing out on great talent, and they don't want that either, right? That's crazy.
What are the customers that you work with? What were some of the big challenges they were facing, and why they came to digital hire? Like, for instance, is it same like, yeah, it was too much of the initial screening, or yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
The number one challenge is just finding enough great people, and I think that's across all of our clients. It's like we do not have enough great talent. We need more. We need more sourcing capabilities. And one of the things that makes us a lot different than any other video platform is we actually go find those candidates because I understand the industry. Like I didn't know how to write an ad. I wasted tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure out how to write an ad properly because if you don't write it properly, you don't get the return on your investment like you should. And so we have an ad writing team. We have, all these resources that they'll do all the work. It's the easy button, right? So that like literally you just show to our platform and there's completed video interviews of candidates that answered your questions that you wanted them to answer. And then you could take them and recruit them from there. And that's really so that's the number one. The number two, I would say, need in the market is honestly probably uh, more visibility into the character and their culture, right? Because at the end of the day, you go through this filtration process, and then they're not a good fit the culturally, or like it's not a good connection. Like we're dating, we're jumping to marriage before we dated too many. So
Yeah,
it's that
yeah.
huge problem, and so they love being able to see the candidate just answer a few questions, as simple as it is, and it gives candidates a much better shot at getting placed. It just does. It gets them the opportunity to sell who they are and what they're about versus just hoping their resume doesn't get screened.
So you mentioned writing an ad. What's like your philosophy on a good ad versus a bad ad?
Um, I, you know, I have learned that I am not the best writer at a very early age. So I have leveraged my team to write amazing ads. But here's the truth. A good ad, you might think it's great. You might say, like, this is such an attractive ad. When people read it, they're going to apply. That doesn't matter at all. That does not matter at all. What actually matters is the keywords that align with the algorithm of the job board that's going to pull those candidates. And so I don't do any ad writing. I let the ad writing team as experts. They meet with these job boards on a regular basis. They know their algorithms. They understand how they pull. It's like a Google search. And I think people can relate it to this. It's like, if you're searching for SEO, search engine optimization, what keywords are on your website? What's going to pull up your
Yeah,
website? The same exact thing with your resumes and posting ads. Same thing. And the candidates are usually searching I mean, they're searching kind of generic. Like I typed in entry level, like when I was out of college, and that's actually a good if for you listening. If you want to post an ad, you want a lot of candidates just to be able to sort through. Entry level is usually a good starting point because that's a pretty high search uh, engine for the candidate. Um, Sales rep is actually probably not that good, to be honest, because um, a lot of salespeople will look for account management or brand ambassador. There's all these different titles you got to really take into account. Um, and if they are looking for sales rep, then you're competing with kind of a different level of sales, technical sales and things like that you might not want to be competing with.
I wanted to ask a few rapid fire questions. Just I like to ask
Let's do
everyone
it.
that I do podcasts with. What's your favorite business or personal development book?
How to Win and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
The old
Um,
classic. Oh yeah. What does your kind of morning daily routine look like?
One thing that's not talked about that much is energy management. And I was taught this that, there's a point in everyone's day where you feel like you're pretty high energy. I try to do the most productive things in the day during those times. And I have my highest use of time. If I'm doing strategy, if I'm doing deep thinking stuff, it's always between, 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock, because that's where I'm the most in my zone with my energy.
Last one. If you could turn back time, 18-year-old self, and give you some advice, what would that be?
It's a very tough question because my initial response is no advice, because I think some of the experiences you go through is what develops your character and what you ultimately become. And so you wouldn't want to cheat that, but to play the game, I think I would tell my younger self to take more risk earlier on.
Mm,
I think I was a little and some people look at me like I'm super risky, I think, but I
Yeah.
would have I would have probably took more risk earlier on. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, that's funny because you're right. Entrepreneur, you've done quite a few risky things, but yeah, that's good.
Yeah, right.
Uh, well, Mark, how can people get in touch with you? To learn more or work with you, or where's the best place to reach out?
Yeah, so I think my email, so it's just Hoge at digitalhire.com. Mark. My last name's spelled Hoge, even though it's pronounced with a D in there, so throws everyone off. Shoot me an email. You could, find us on our website. If you just go to our chat bot on Digital Hire and say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to Mark," it will get to me, and I can reach out to you. That's probably the two easiest. And before we drop, I just want to, if you don't mind, Trey, I just want to, thank you personally. You've helped me a lot, and a lot of the listeners might not know this, but Trey helped me out when I was transitioning to the tech world from sales. We related there, and you took time out to help me with no benefit of your own. It was just super genuine, and I really appreciate you. And thank you for having me on the podcast today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. A lot of really good information shared with the listeners. Recruiting is something that you have to do well if you're going to grow a business. It's like that's it, right? If you can't do that, you are not growing a sales team, a business, anything. So I'm excited that the listeners get to take this and run with it. It's been an absolute pleasure, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You've just listened to the Inside Scoop on Outside Sales Podcast with your host, Trey Gibson. Please feel free to leave us a review and subscribe to our channel so you can catch our next episode. Thank you for listening.